Sometimes I have time to do it, not always. And sometimes I have time to read newspapers like The Guardian. So one day I was by chance reading The Guardian. It was maybe the first time in the last 2 weeks, and I see an article about a guy telling about his personal story. He was called Dr. Khurram SAADIQ, and he was telling about he was struggling himself to get to know better how his brain was working. And he was telling about his struggle to perform better. And he was also telling about his vision to talk about an issue that it has not been talked about many times. Actually, in this house, I think it's one of the first times that we talk about mental health and that we talk about inspiring change for a more inclusive mental health environment. At the DIN, we have been doing a lot of events concerning blind people or deaf colleagues and many other initiatives. Today, it was the day to start about mental health. When I saw that article, I wanted to contact Dr. Khurram SAADIQ. So I did. There are social networks, it's easy to get to people. And then he says to me, look, Adam, we are coming this weekend with my wife to Vienna. This was the cosmic coincidence. So we invited him to come here to visit the United Nations. And then we were going to CTVTO, and suddenly we just meet our friend Sotiris down there at your wonderful exhibition. And we said, you know what, we should bring Khurram here to Vienna to tell the colleagues about his vision. Again, it is time to talk about mental health issues. It is time to talk about people who have brains that work differently and how to do the proper talent management to get the best out of them. But I'm not the important person today. Khurram SAADIQ is. I will give the floor to him. Thank you so much for being here today. We are thrilled to have you here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me clearly now? All right. Okay. So I'll start with a story. I hate sitting down. I hate PowerPoint presentation. I like engagement with the audience. And I'll be asking a lot of questions. I should be prepared for it. If you don't volunteer, then I'll pick myself. So it's a story of a young boy who was in the northern part of Pakistan. In the primary school, he used to struggle a lot. He was daydreaming. He used to be up with the fairies. This is the kind of terminologies that we use in England, a kind of metaphor to explain daydreaming. He used to lose his textbooks. I remember his mother sitting down till 12 o'clock midnight to do his homework on his behalf because he would be asleep. Because if he did not do the homework, he would get beaten by the teachers, and it was a norm there in Pakistan at that time. Not anymore. And he used to lose his lunch boxes, his money. He used to come home without a jacket. I don't remember him telling me or me knowing that how many times he has to buy the geometry set. And his father used to get very furious about it because it used to cost a lot of money. So every 10 days, and it continued. There were sparks of brilliance. Sometimes, when the teacher was good, he would do amazingly well. And then there are other classes, when he got promoted, then he would fail the subjects. And it went on and on and on till he was in GCSEs. It happened the same way. He was not interested. It was last minute. And then he went into pre-med. All of a sudden, in pre-med, he became too focused because he wanted to be a doctor. And he wanted to do something. His mother told him that he's going to be a neurosurgeon. But now when he tells me, he said, thank God it did not happen because he's so clumsy, he would be causing more disability than... Yeah. So he went into medical school. I remember the first day he went to the medical school, and it was all unstructured. It was all fluid. The different subjects, they were starting somewhere in the middle. This was something that he did not want to do. He wanted structure, but at the same time, he was too disorganized, too anarchic. And in third year, when it became too much, he went to his father and said, I want to leave medicine. And his father said, do what you have started, and then you can think about something. So while he was doing medicine, he started doing his bachelor's in arts. He learned about ancient civilization, because at that time, in order to get into civil service, you had to do that, and he didn't want to do medicine at all. He was scared of people, he was scared of blood, he was wary of people, he did not know how to communicate with people. And if you're a doctor, I know that the first thing, important thing, is communication. And he struggled. He failed, he flunked, he had to reappear. I think out of the class of 222, he was the second last boy in the class to have, in terms of the scores, because there was a system of name and shame at that time. He was shamed a lot. He tried civil services, that did not work for him, till he moved to United Kingdom. And then he found his mojo. This is me. This is my story. And I've got autism and I've got ADHD. I remember when I was coming to the UK, and it was in 2003, I've been in the UK for about 21 years now. People used to tell my family, I said, he's useless. He's not going to go anywhere. He's going to waste your money, he's going to waste your time, he's going to come back, and he's going to be a burden on you. When I see myself, when I compare myself with others, a lot of people go through this experience. Misunderstood, differently able, and again, we have a different way of gauging things. For example, intelligence, we gauge it with IQ. But if you look at it, the IQ testing is so much flawed in so many ways, because there are actually 7 types of intelligence, and you can be intelligent in any of those areas, and you cannot be very intelligent in other areas. But that does not mean that you have a low IQ. So the whole system is kind of rigged against people who are differently able. And that's where the neurodiversity drive came in. Because for a very long time, if you look at the history of autism, if you look at the history of ADHD, which is the 2 things which I'm going to be concentrating on today, you will see that it started with very strange conceptualizations. For example, AD was called a moral disorder in 1902, moral disorder in children. And in the early years, mothers with children who had autism spectrum condition, they were called refrigerated mothers. It's because they did not have any emotions, hence they could not pass the emotions on to others. So there has been a lot of misconceptions over the years, which led to this neurodiversity drive. And then this neurodiversity drive is basically what tries to describe what's different and how difference can be embraced and how difference can be so much useful in so many ways. When we talk about neurodiversity, what are the things that come to your mind when you're talking about neurodiversity or when you're thinking of neurodiversity? Anybody? Yep. Sir?
Lack of attention span.
Yep.
Some very defined neurodiversity disorders like dyslexia, dyspraxia.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Sorry. Please, when you talk, use your microphone so we have the captioning. Thanks.
Yeah, different ways of expressing the emotions.
Yeah.
And also a sensory overdrive, so it could be the hearing or it could be the way you see things, the way you perceive things, which obviously causes lots of problems in social settings.
Yep. Yeah. And you're all right, basically. But how we describe neurodiversity is different brains doing different things and they are based on their strengths. We are moving away from a medical model. The medical model is about deficits. With autism spectrum condition, if you go to DSM-5, which is one of my favorite classification system. There's another one, International Classification of Diseases. A lot of European and British doctors, they follow it, but I don't follow it because in terms of neurodiversity or neurodevelopmental condition, they have been at least 20 to 30 years behind DSM-5. So once you look at it, it starts with deficits. Autism spectrum deficits in social interactions, deficits in social communication, stereotypical behavior, repetitive movements, repetitive behaviors, and trying to pathologize everything. Everything is a pathology. Everything is bad. And this is used to happen. For example, I came to this country in 2003. I started my training in 2004. And my first experience with neurodiversity was when my consultant asked me. I was a junior doctor in Northeast Lincolnshire, and he said, can you assess a person who's coming with autism, Asperger's at that time? Because we don't use the term Asperger's anymore, 2013. It is now called autism spectrum disorder. And according to the neurodiversity drive, it's called autism spectrum condition. So I said, oh, autism. He must be disabled. I said, no, he's an astrophysicist. You clearly do not know what you're talking about, so you go and read the book. And I went and I read the book. And I got fascinated. I spent 2.5 hours with that person, with his idea, with his brain, and when I came out, I was like, wow. How can this be a disability? How can this be defined as a disorder? How we cannot pick it up? That was my first encounter, and somehow I found myself somewhere. Because I remember when I was delivering one of the talks, TEDx talks, that was in 2021, which is about the superhumans that exist amongst us. I did it in Sevenoaks, that is an area in Kent. And there was a self-disclosure in that. And my friend in Australia, he called me, he's a psychiatrist as well. I said, oh, I hear that there's a self-disclosure. At that time I was diagnosed, but not many people know. I said, yeah, there is a self-disclosure. I said, since when did you know about yourself? I said, 5 years. I said, did you know? I said, yeah. The moment I met you, I knew that you were differently able, and in a year's time, I knew that you were autistic. I said, you never told me. I said, because at that time, there was misconceptions around autism, and I didn't want you to be offended by that. So I'm talking about medical fraternity, and I'm talking about mental health, and I'm talking about psychiatrists, where the stigma is so much that is autism and ADHD is described by a deficit model, and nobody is looking at the strengths. I have met young boys, one of the boys who can predict weather through the smell. And again, this is not magic, this is not superpower. It's about the amount of moisture in the air that helps you to describe what's going to happen. Your nerve ending in your nose are so acutely focused on it that predicts. And when I asked the mother, I said, how often is he right? And she said, 100%. And then I saw another boy who was making aerodynamic models for cars. He was 8 years of age, and he made 3, and he put it on his parents' social media profile and asking audiences which one is better. And he was picked up by one of the automotive industry. I think it was either Dodge or it was either Audi that picked on it, and they started working with him. So they are amazing people. They might come across as quirky. They might come across as socially awkward because they don't know how to carry themselves when interacting with people, what people are going to think about them, what do they have to say, what do they have to do in those specific situations. So neurodiversity paradigm is a movement that is helping people to understand using the strengths of the model rather than the deficits. For example, a person with ADHD, they will say, lazy, no deadlines. But that person will give you 1,000,001 ideas. A lot of it is mediocrity. Few of them are brilliant ideas. They have the brains that sees things very differently. Because they are creating hexes around everything, because everything has to be a shortcut, an effective shortcut, in order to reach from one point to another. In the process, they discover something very unique, something amazing. They are the last-minute.coms. That's what we call them, people with ADHD. But they are the best people in crisis situation. You have a crisis, you go to that person, and they will sort it out for you. Because they are used to that kind of crisis. They have dealt with crisis day in and day out in their own lives, missing bill payments, not putting in the income tax return, in England, HMRC, and all of those things. So for them, life is a crisis. Anything that comes to them, they deal with it as a crisis situation. And they are so good and so composed in those situations. So this neurodiversity paradigm is getting stronger. This movement is getting stronger, and it is helping people to define themselves and not to be very morose about it. See things in the positive limelight. I believe that this world would have been a different place if we didn't have neurodivergent people. We would not have the changes because they see things differently. They do things differently. When Steve Jobs was creating Apple laptop, he said, I want this computer, this laptop, to be beautiful from the inside as well as the outside. So that in case if it gets broken and somebody opens it, they should see that we have done an amazing job. He was that attention to detail. Bill Gates, Albert Einstein, you name it. Thomas Edison, who had more than 1,000 inventions. But again, you don't know how many times he had been unsuccessful. So the drive to make things happen once they start believing in something. This is what the neurodiversity is all about. Now, it's a very important debate about whether it's a disorder or a condition. Now, if you look at the genomic studies, if you look at the DNA studies that has been going on now, they see that these characteristics, these features of autism and ADHD were life-savers. It's because of those features that we are sitting here. Imagine a hunter in the forest foraging for food. And if he was not distracted by the rustling of the leaves that was happening a few meters away, and he would not apply himself to act at that moment in time impulsively, he'd be somebody else's food. Now it is thought of as a survival toolkit that humanity had when we were hunters, when we were cavemen in the prehistoric age, when we were living in the wild, and then at the same time developing yourself a strong sense of smell, the strong sense of the sensory overload that they used to experience, the noises, the sounds, the smells that help them get to the food, have a survival strategy in place. So now they're saying that the ADHD and autism has been there as far as humanity has existed. But the problem is, the environment has changed very quickly. And if you look at the environment and things around us, if you compare yourself with the pre-iPhone era and the post-iPhone era, an era where you used to have the Nokia slabs that we used to carry with us. And after that, the apps and how easy the world has become. Everything is on your fingertip. And what has happened is a lot of people have mobilized behind the office desk. What's nightmare for a person with ADHD? What's the nightmare job for an ADHD person, an ADHDer, as they call it? Any takers? Yep.
A highly routine position in which they have to do the exact same thing every single day in exactly the same way.
Yeah, I just felt it here. Exactly. If you put them in office jobs, admin jobs, office jobs are fine as long as it's not doing the same thing day in and day out. I was having conversations with Adam, and I said that I'm into research, I do a lot of talks, I do my clinical work, my private clinical work. At the same time, yeah, I'm writing a book as well on AuDHD. There's so many things that is happening, but it is all around neurodiversity. So I found my mojo. But again, I am spreading out in different directions, but I have the same base. I come back to it. If I get bored, I start writing paper. If I get bored, I do some research. If I get bored, I get into my reports doing the clinical work. I never get bored. But again, if I have to do one very job, if it is not challenging, for the love of God, I will be reported to GMC. And I tell people, I said, if you want me to be reported, send me into a boring job, a perfect team. I'll be the absolutely worst person. If you give me a challenge, a challenging team, I'll be the best person. My productivity will increase that much because there's a challenge. There's something to look up to. There's something that has to change. So, moving away from the medical model, having a neurodiversity paradigm, a strength-based model, where we look at the strengths, and people have started to do that. There are organizations who look for neurodivergent people day in and day out to do their work because they know that they are different, they are versatile, and they do not have any rigidity in them. Like, my mind goes alive at about 12 midnight, and I can work brilliantly till 3 o'clock. And this is the time when I send a lot of emails, and a few of them, they came to me and said, yeah, whenever I hear a ping 2 o'clock in the morning, I know that you have sent an email. I said, sorry. This is the boring thing, and this is, I keep it for the time where I'm not distracted, the time when I know that there isn't anything to do. So the flexibility that comes with it, people with neurodiversity, they have different routines. Like, if you bind them in 9 to 5, they'll be miserable. For me, I can be at my workplace at 8 o'clock till 8 o'clock. I can be there from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. I can be there at home from 6 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock. They believe in getting the work done. For them, that's an important thing. And again, I run a team in which 60 to 70% of the people are neurodivergent. Either they've got autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, and we are so open. There's a non-hierarchy. Everybody can say whatever they want to. They have a bad day, they have a good day. Sometimes I walk in and my lead admin, who's also an AuDHD, which has got autism and ADHD together, she said, Khurram, I think you're having an autistic day today. Because I'll be shut, my room will be kind of closed. I'll be in my zone. I'll be a bit irritable about things that has not happened. And then one day we walk in and say, it's your ADHD day, honky-dory. There's music playing, 80s music, there's things going on, people dancing around. And yeah, the biggest things would not offset me. So you have to understand that thing, and this happens with everybody. Each member of the staff, they go through that phases, and we support them in that work environment. We are aware of the neurodiversity. We are aware that the brain works differently. Again, how can you expect different ingredients to have the same product? We're all different ingredients. We come from different places. We are brought up in a different way. We have been nurtured in a completely different manner. So how do you expect the same product out of us? If you have got different ingredients, you've got a different product. And this is what neurodiversity is all about. It's about brain working differently, being productive in a very different and a non-conventional way. And it's amazing. Yesterday we were having a conversation with Adam, and Adam mentioned that then why is it that people who are neurodivergent, they are not highlighted, or people, they do not take into account. I've been called a mad person, so many things, for doing things and bringing up strategies. And then the same person came back to me 3 years later and said, how did you do that? I said, do you remember 3 years back? The paper I gave you that you binned? The whole plan was in it. That's what I did. And that's why I'm here. Can you share the model? Yeah, we can share the model. So things apparently out of the box does not appeal to people. They get scared, they get insecure, and the insecurity needs to go. If we have to work together in an environment where the neurotypicals and neurodivergent work, we have to know about each other. And I was talking to a patient, and my patients are my books. The way I learn from them, like, it is amazing. Every day I learn something new. And I was telling her about a book about neurodivergent. I said, I do not want a book about neurodivergent. I am freaking neurodivergent. I want somebody who write a book about being neurotypical. I want to know more about them. Is there a book? I said, no. Unfortunately, no. There isn't any book about being neurotypical, which is catered for a neurodivergent audience. And that would be so amazing. So that's where the neurodiversity come in. The neurodiversity includes the neurodevelopmental conditions. And sorry, I got sidetracked when I was talking about condition and disorder. And I gave you an example of the evolutionary model. I gave you the strength-based model. So on the basis of that, as long as it is not interfering with your day-to-day work, day-to-day life, it's a condition, it's not a disorder. You put scaffoldings in, you put support structures in, you support them, and you will see that the disorder turns into a condition. What is hypertension? Blood pressure, high blood pressure. Is it an illness? Is it a disorder? Anybody? It's a condition. It's not been listed under illnesses. It is listed under a condition. Pregnancy is a condition. So why can't ADHD be ADHD? And why can't autism spectrum disorder can be ASC? I think this is the new drive that we are talking about in terms of advocacy. And I'm not undermining the difficulties that people who have got neurodivergent face day in and day out. I told you about my story. And this is one of millions of stories of other people who have come from different backgrounds, and they have struggled. But once they find the supporting environment, once they find something that their heart is in it, and they have got emotions and they have passion towards it, the whole scenario changes. I'm talking about 1970s and 80s when it was happening to me. Now we're living in 2020s where we have got social media, where we have got different platforms that can educate us about ADHD. I know that a lot of the time ADHD and autism is called a TikTok diagnosis, right? It's a very common terminology that you use, and I get very offended by that. I said, in 1970s, how did you learn? Like, I remember my father in 1980s brought me an encyclopedia, 10 books of Britannica encyclopedia, said, learn. He got me a subscription of Reader's Digest and Times in 1980s in Pakistan, said, learn. In the UK, you have a newspaper called The Guardian, or The Independent, or The Times. And then you have got another newspaper called The Sun. If somebody is from the UK and have got that background, they will know that it is one of the sensationalist newspaper that you get. You have both the choices. So is the case we live in the world of, we were talking about Generation Z, right? Do you know which generation are we at this moment in time? Who are we dealing with, the latest generation, amongst the X, Ys, and Zs? Alpha. Next year is going to be beta generation. So alpha has been there from 2010 to 2024. From 2025 onwards, it will be beta generation. And it was when I'm a Generation X, so I used to study, I used to learn from encyclopedias, from newspapers, from books, from libraries. Then it changed. Then internet came, Generation Y. They started using Google and Yahoo at that time. And then things changed. We got social media and Facebook and YouTubes and everything, and they started learning from there. Generation Z and Alpha generation, they learn because our attention span progressively have been getting shorter. We have to be aware of that. It's screens and about how we need to do things in a small amount of time. This has led to small attention span. So they learn from the reels of TikTok and Insta stories. Is there anything wrong in it? As long as they are telling you about the right thing. Just like you are able to decipher between what's wrongly written in Sun to what's rightly written in The Guardian, you should be able to have a judgment about that as well. Every material is not going to be bad, or every material is not going to be good. It will be your own judgment, your own research about things that will help you. So saying that it is TikTok diagnosis, that's completely wrong, because this generation has their own way of learning, and this is one of the best learning that they can do. And they learn from so much from it. I've seen my kids having knowledge about things which I do not know about, and when I check it, cross-references, that's actually true. They've learned it from TikTok. I cannot dismiss it. So all of these things around the neurodiversity. Now I'm going to go into the first phase, which is talking about autism and ADHD in children. And then we will take a 5-minute break. And then I'll start with adult ADHD and autism spectrum condition. I'll talk a bit about autism and ADHD then. And then we'll end up having some strategies to start with that can help in the workplace. But what I didn't want the session to be was, this is neurodiversity, these are the strategies. In order to understand neurodiversity, you have to start from the scratch. And that's why I started from the scratch, so that you have a better understanding of what neurodiversity is, what autism is, and what ADHD is. How much time? So 13:42. So we have got 15 to 20 minutes for childhood autism and ADHD, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break. So let's start with ADHD. How many types of ADHD do you think there are? Does anybody know? Yep.
3.
3. Can you tell them?
There is inattentive.
Yeah.
There is hyperactive and combined.
Yeah. So we call it the predominantly inattentive, which means that the mostly features are inattention. And when we talk about inattention, inattention entails attention span. It entails getting sidetracked, getting distracted very easily. Starting one task, ending up in another. You tell a child to clean the room, they'll go start cleaning the room, and soon they'll be somewhere else. You'll see them hearing outside, biking, because they found something in relation to the bike, and they went out and they completely got distracted. Homework is one of the most difficult things. Either they will leave the homework behind, they will not bring the homework, or they will have the homework and they will say, oh, I have time. I've got 3 hours to sleep. 3 hours will become 2 hours, and 1 hour, I can do it 5 minutes. And then the same homework took them an hour or 2 hours. That's called time blindness. time blindness is one of the most common features which you see in ADHD. You feel, and it goes for both child as well as adult, where you feel, oh, I've got so much time. I've got the whole day. And then you realize you're left with 6 hours. And then you realize you're left with 2 hours. And then you realize it's 5 minutes. So the time management is really poor. Then, how would you describe a room of a child who has got ADHD? Yeah. I want some innovative comments. Colorful, yes?
Organized in its own way.
Yeah, organized mess.
Organized mess, I would say.
Yeah.
I would say the opposite. My son is quite particular about where he has things,
Yeah.
and there's actually is quite minimal as well.
Yeah.
Whereas my daughter is completely opposite.
That can happen, especially if the mind starts working, because it is so stressful for them to be able to find things. So their mind starts a systematic way of keeping track of everything. Or a child might have an underlying autism spectrum condition. Both of these things can happen. One is the organization that happens in ADHD. It is ego dystonic. When I say ego dystonic, it is against the principles of what is happening inside. So it will be stressful for them to create that organization. They won't be happy creating that organization. And they will be furious if you just move anything around, because they know that they're going to lose it. So it has been described as a pit to me by parents, bomb site. It's a skip. So those are the words that have been describing the room. So there can be piles of things lying around because they're forgetful. They want things, everything in their visual field. So if you have to do, for example, roller coasters, roller blades, they can be books, they can be empty wrappers, they can be used dishes, glasses. Usually, I think one of my sisters, she finds kind of the whole dozen of glasses in her son's room. Usually, in a day or two, they'll keep on bringing the glasses, juices, water into their room, and then the glasses are missing, and there's nothing there. And then go to his room, yeah, it's all there, lying around in different places. So this is how the room is described. Forgetfulness is something. They're forgetful, they lose things, they'll leave things behind. Losing things is, again, connected to organization, because if they're disorganized, they'll be losing things in their room. They won't know where the stuff is. Usually this defines inattention, roughly. Again, I can talk to you about it for hours, just about the inattention and the examples, but we are stressed for time, so I will be as limited as possible. And it's called predominantly inattentive type. That it means that they might not just have the inattentive features. They have the hyperactivity, impulsivity features, but that does not fit the criteria for it to be called hyperactive impulsive. So it can be fidgety, unable to sit still, restless, moving their legs, playing with something in the hand. Fidget toys are one of the most common things. Changing posture in the seat, watching TV all inverted. They're like on the sofa beds. In the classroom, they'll be seesawing with the chair, having falls a few times. They will make excuses to be able to move around. For example, I need a pencil, I need to sharpen, I need something from outside, I need to go to the toilet when they don't need it. So that can be fidgetiness, that can be defined as fidgetiness, but that does not mean if somebody is fidgety that they're hyperactive at the same time. Fidgetiness is because the lack of concentration, plus they aren't able to focus. Because if you look at the term attention deficit, it is a misnomer. Like, again, I hope they change it at some point. children have got too much attention. But again, it's keeping attention on one task can be difficult. It's the shifting of attention in a short span of time to 10,000 different things. That's what the problem is. So attention is in abundance, but the problem is that they cannot focus on one thing at a time. Now, since we're describing it as hyperactive, so they will be walking on the fences, climbing walls, not afraid of heights, risk perception is not there at all. They're always on the go. People find it difficult. They are draining. The children with ADHD who have got hyperactive, they're draining. They drain your energy out because you're not able to keep up with the energy. Despite of the fact that they can be sporty, they can be out, they can be doing so many things, but when they come back home, they're still very energized. So it's about using the energy, utilizing the energy, and it can be very difficult. It can be very difficult. It can be managed by strategies, but a lot of the time, hyperactivity, impulsivity, if it persists for a longer period of time, it is managed by the medication. Now, when it comes to impulsivity, blurting out things, saying things, they cannot keep a secret. Yeah, don't share anything with them about your friend, or about if you're saying not really nice things about somebody, don't say it in front of them. Because the moment they see them and say, oh, my mom was saying this about you, and you're all embarrassed then. They blurt out things, they don't know how to take their turn because they're impatient. On the road, they have to be very careful. They have to have a leash. There have been so many accidents or near misses that happens, and they don't know boundaries. So what's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine. So if things are lying around, they'll pick it up, and if he says, it's mine, no, it was lying there, so that's just mine now. So they don't have that perception of boundaries. So that's where we're talking about hyperactive and impulsive type of ADHD. And the third type is a combined type where you've got everything. You've got inattention, you've got hyperactivity, you've got impulsivity. Okay. Now, talking about children with autism, a completely different spectrum. They can be very recluse. They want to do things in their own silos. They prefer their own space. And they prefer their own spaces a lot of the time. They don't know. There's so many reasons for that. One of the reasons is that they do not find social interactions healthy because they do not know what to do in those social interactions. They lack the skill set for those social interactions. Or they want to be alone because there's a lot of sensory overload. The moment they go out, they hear all the noises, all the sounds, somebody opening the crisp, somebody biting, somebody breathing. Like I've heard children said, why is that man breathing? I said, you have to breathe. They have to breathe. But not that. But that's not how you breathe. And then you'll feel the social interaction is usually people complain, yeah, they work better with adults. They are chatty with adults because they don't have, they feel that their mind is mature enough and they can have a conversation with an adult. Either it's going to be an adult, somebody who's 3, 4 years, 6 years older to them, or somebody who's younger because there are no expectations. With the same age group, there are expectations, and hence they do not know what to do in those situations. They'll be very helpful with the babies. They would love the babies. They would be absolutely brilliant with animals, and they will be brilliant with adults. They will be seen a lot of the time helping their children in breaks because they don't want to go out. There's an overload. There's an expectation to them to be able to talk. If you ask them about small talk, it does not mean anything. In adulthood, so many times said, it's pointless. Why would you talk about weather all the time? You have got all the apps. Why would I talk about weather? Why would I talk about tea or coffee or somebody else's child being born? It's pointless to me. Talk to me about something meaningful, and I will speak to you about it. I'll tell you in detail about it. So small talk does not mean anything today. But then there are cultural variations, and again, we were having a lot of discussion with Adam about it. Cultural variation, I was born in Pakistan. I know a lot of people who have got autism, ADHD, come from India, Sri Lanka. They're different. Why they're different? And plus, the diagnosis is less. It's not that it does not exist there, but then there's a social strata and social systems that helps them develop that skill set. When I was young, and if somebody come to my home, I could not bail out of it. I have to go and do the greetings. I have to sit with them. I have to serve them. I have to talk to them whether I like it or not. And that became a habit. And that became a skill set for me. And that helped a lot. So a lot of people who have come from different cultures, for example, Southeast Asia, Far East Asia, Latin American, African, because the social structure, social strata is so much different, the expectation from the child is so much different. They are thrown into the deep end, not knowingly, very unknowingly, because this is the norm over there, but this is how you socially interact with people. You'll be in a party with 10,000 relatives of yours, and you have to go and greet them. If they're elders, you have to talk to them, you have to be nice to them, and hence you learn the social skill set. And hence we do not see those things in those children till they hit an age of transition. And in autism and ADHD, transitions are very important. I tell people that if you keep an autistic child in the same environment for the rest of their lives, you'll never know that the person is autistic. So what is autism? Autism is the fear of not knowing the unknown. If they know all the possibilities around it, that I go into a situation, I know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, I'm fine. I can deal with those situations. And usually when you throw people in a deep end, especially autistic people, the first time is difficult. The second time, they do manage the situation brilliantly because they analyze and they prepare themselves for that situation. And hence, they do better in those situations. So not keeping them in silos, but exposing them at the same time in a very structured way is the way forward. Change something that they do not like. Change in environment, last-minute changes, because the fear of not knowing the unknown. If they're going into that place, if you're saying, mother's saying, oh, let's get ready, we're going to go to that superstore in about 10 minutes' time. If they've not been there, no. They will push and pull the limits so that they do not go. But eventually they have to go. But once they're there, they know the situation, the next time they'll be slightly better. And then the next time they'll be slightly better. So changes comes with a lot of preparation. You have to prepare them, even if they're children, 5, 6, 7, 8, no matter how old they are, you have to prepare them before you're doing anything. Holidays, they want to know how many rooms, how many people are going to be there, what it looks like, the roads around that area. Everybody has their own quirky way of knowing about what's around me and what are the things that are going to secure me if I know about these things. Social cues is something that they do not get a lot of the time. And why aren't they able to get? Because A, of the eye contact. If they don't make eye contact, then they don't see things. At the same time, they have difficulty in finding their own emotions. They don't know why they react, how they react in a certain way, in certain environments, and in certain situations. They don't know whether they're happy, they're sad, they're petrified, they're terrified, they're fearful. So if you ask them about that emotion, if you ask them about what happiness is, they won't be able to give you, they won't be able to define you. So dealing with their own emotions can be difficult. Dealing with somebody else's emotion, knowing, picking from the facial features, they're unable to do that. They're unable to read the body language. But once they start doing it, they overdo it at times. This is, the whole focus becomes this. They know so much about it, but then when they overdo it, they sometimes go overboard and go the opposite direction. And they anticipate too much. And because of that anticipation, a lot of avoidance comes into play. Very black and white in their thought process. If they say, it's raining cats and dogs, but we are the chipmunks. That's what a boy told me, I said, it doesn't make sense to me. Why can't you just say, it's raining heavily? Why do you have to bring in a metaphor that does not make sense? But then they go back and they check the metaphor and the history of that metaphor, and they know it very well. The next time, they will use that. So for them, context is very important. You cannot tell them, you don't have to do this. Explain to them, why is it the case? And don't expect changes to happen straight away. Leave the information with them and let it brew in their head, and then let them make the decision. Don't expect a decision. Don't say, oh, I've understood it. You won't get it from them. Then somebody spoke about friends and sensory overload. So friends, they've got very few friends. They gravitate towards people who are who has got neurodevelopmental condition, because there's a research going on. There are a few researchers going on which says that probably a neurotypical person won't be able to understand a neurodivergent person, and hence neurodivergent person gravitate towards another neurodivergent person to be able to understand. There's a difference how the brain works, and there's a lot of research which is underway about it as to what's difference in a neurotypical brain and what's difference in a neurodivergent brain, and why is it that they cannot see. The neurotypical cannot see what the struggles are, those of neurodivergent people, and vice versa as well. So friend-wise, limited friends, they won't initiate contact, you have to push them to make friendship, play dates, sleepovers. If you look at their history, most of the time, it's a no-go area. Even if they go, if they're forced to do that, I think within the next few hours, they'll be back home. Then we have got discrete interest and sensory overload. So discrete interest is, if they get interested in something, then God help you. Because they will be better than an expert who's an expert in that field. For example, I remember seeing somebody who's got autism spectrum condition came into my office and said, oh, the board, it's asbestos, that's can poison. And then for the next 30 to 40 minutes, he was talking about asbestos poisoning, and I did not know anything about it. So once they delve into something, they will be experts in those. And they might get bored, or they might carry out that thing for the rest of their lives. There'll be attention to detail in those areas. They will know each and everything. They will read each and every book. They read documentaries. Same is the case with repetition. When they repeat things, repeating movies over and over again. Has anybody seen a series, Ted Lasso? It's on Apple TV. I think it's, if you have not seen it, it's the best guidebook on leadership that you can get. It's 3 series. I've watched it 26 times. And I'm watching it the 27th time without getting bored of it. And this happens a lot with people who have got autism. They will see a certain movie on a certain occasion, day in and day out. For example, for Christmas, Home Alone is a compulsory thing for us. We have to watch Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2. We cannot have Christmas without Home Alone. So those are the things that you have to look at. Repetition in clothes, repetition in food. And again, repetition in clothes has to do with a certain color. There'll be black, grays, navy blues. Or if they are different colors, they will buy the same thing in 10 different colors. Because they don't want coming back and saying that it's out of line now. They don't do that anymore. So hence, they buy a lot of things. When it comes to food, it is a lot of texture-based. How it looks like, how it feels in the mouth, and what are the associations that they get. So that's why the food repertoire is very narrow in people with autism spectrum condition. Over a period of time, it changes. Again, if somebody comes in, for example, I used to hate tomatoes when I was growing up. And I still hate mushrooms. No matter what you do, you cannot convince me in liking a mushroom. This is the first thing that comes out of my pizza. So for tomato, one of my aunts, she said, have you tried it this way, the raw way? I said, no, I have not. So she put some black pepper and salt and said, have a taste. I just loved it. And I have never looked back. So sometimes doing things in a different way, understanding What is so different? Is it the taste? Is it the texture? Is it what it looks like? If you change it around, probably the child would be able to eat it better. So hence the repertoire of food that you see. And sensory overload is the biggest thing, like loud bangs. It can be anything from loud bangs. For example, when I go to toilets, the air dryers, God, I just can't stand them. Some are so loud, like literally it gives me physical illness. Like I'm physically sick. And sometimes I have to go and I'm doing it like this. So I have to use one hand to close my ear and the other hand to dry it. And this happens a lot with people. They can hear things from a distance. They can hear the neighbors. So a lot of the times, people have been diagnosed with psychotic disorder when they did not know. They say, I could hear the neighbors and I could hear people. And people thought they're paranoid and they're suspicious. No, they've got heightened senses. They can pick up the frequencies that others cannot. Cat deterrent devices, rat deterrent devices. Children or people with autism can hear those. They can hear those frequencies. So they're tuned into their network of picking it up. Smells, they can actually tell you about the brand by smelling the food. They can tell you the food is going to go off in a few days, and you realize that 3 days later it's going off because of something that they have picked up. Sense of aromas, smells, they are very good at it. Not everybody has got everything. That's what you have to remember. There isn't a typical autistic picture. They say, when you've seen one person with autism, you have seen one person with autism. You have seen one person with ADHD, you have seen one person with ADHD. Just like in neurotypicals, you cannot say this person is so similar to others. Same is the case with neurodiversity. You cannot say that. And yeah, so this was the diagnostic criteria. I've given you kind of a highlight of what it entails and why it entails. It's such an amazing and fascinating topic. I can talk about it for the whole day. If you give me 9 to 5, I can be the only speaker and I can talk to you about it. But again, we are limited with time. So what we will do is we're going to take a 5 minutes break and bring your thoughts together, and then we can reconvene in exactly 12 past 2 now. Thank you.
I hate mushrooms too.
Yeah. How's it?
Did you like it? He's amazing, isn't he? Yes.
Yeah.
So many things. You need some time to digest.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
We need to shut on his microphone. His microphone?
Yes. We're starting. Hello. The break is over. We're starting.
Sorry, I had to energize myself. So, we'll start talking about what happens in adults. Before we move on to adults, I'll tell you a bit about the type of assessments that we do for autism and ADHD. It's not a typical half an hour assessment. These assessments are quite detailed. Like we look at the 360 degrees perspective. For example, in children, we get a lot of information from the parents, we get a lot of information from the schools, educational institutes, tutors that they're working with, and then we expose them into a social play situation where there's one person observing, and then we have a developmental history done later. So one assessment can be extended over a period of 4 to 6 hours. Whereas in ADHD, again, a 360 degrees perspective, where we take a lot of, because what we have to understand is ADHD and autism does not happen. The diagnosis is not confounded unless it is happening in 2 or more settings. And if you don't explore 2 or more settings, it means that if you just explore one setting, anybody can challenge the diagnosis, and you will miss a lot of information, which is basically linked to the other setting. In ADHD, again, very similar things. School reports, we rely a lot on it. There's some screening tools which are provided to the school as well as the parents in order for them to fill. And then we see the child with the parent for time duration about 2 hours. And then we have the final reports. Usually the autism and ADHD reports are quite long. So it can vary anywhere from 8 pages to 40 or 50 pages, depending on the situation, circumstances on the child. Now, when you're talking about adult manifestations, first of all, ADHD and autism cannot happen if there isn't a problem in childhood. That's what you have to understand. It's a neurodevelopmental condition. It means that when they were in the womb, something happened to their brain. The brain changed the way it usually grows into something different, into their connectivity and their sizes, their brain tracts, they're all different. And that happens during that phases. It's genetic as well. It is transferred. 60 to 70% of the time, it is transferred. 30% of the time, we don't know it, but it is considered to be genetic. We haven't found an environmental evidence of environment causing autism and ADHD. So, an adult, it is a challenge. Because if you're getting a 70-year-old whose parents have passed away, there are no school reports, how do you give a diagnosis of ADHD? Then you have to go with your own sensibility about whatever they know about it. If there's a parent or anybody, not a parent, if there's a brother, sibling, if there is a partner who knew the person for a very long time, or a colleague, or a childhood friend, then we get that information from that person. So it is a bit more challenging as compared to a childhood assessment. Plus, as we grow older, what we do is we develop different supporting structures, different mechanisms, different scaffoldings to support us during that time. And it is very difficult to see beyond that sometimes because they are set in stone. For example, one thing was about ADHD and organization. And I get really excited when I get somebody who's got ADHD, but they're very organized in their own ways, which is fascinating. So either they have their own very strong structures that they have developed, and those structures are very ego-dystonic. It means that they do not appeal to them, but they have to do it because otherwise they will be too chaotic and too stressful. Whereas if there's an underlying autism which is causing them to be more organized, then it means that you have to explore further for a co-occurrence of autism and ADHD. And in colloquial terms, we use the term AuDHD, AuDHD, which means the coexistence of autism and ADHD. Right? Now, so many times I have come across people who say, and the parents have filled the observer's form. The observer's form are basically right from the time of developmental history, the pregnancy, the milestones, the education, employment, addictions, everything till date, and plus exploring about the ADHD symptoms using 10-page or 12-page form that we prepare beforehand. So many times, a person is presenting clearly with ADHD, but there is no background history, or even the background, according to the parent, they were doing well. Then you have to explore further. There can be so many different possibilities around it. One possibility is they're already a neurodivergent family, so having 4, 5, 6 children with ADHD, or having an extended family of people with autism and ADHD, that is a norm for them. So they see children like that. Hence, they don't see it any different from a non-ADHD or non-autistic person. Secondly, you have got a strict parenting. Parents who manage everything that you do, right from your homework to your exam preparation, to cleaning your room, to getting your bed done. Like people who are coming from Pakistan and India and Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, till 20 years of age, we literally don't know who cleans our room. Like we leave them in a state of mess, and when I come back, it's magic. It's done. So till we move to another country or move to another city or become independent, or you get married and your wife said, you are a nightmare because your mother has pampered you a lot, or you had house help and they're caretakers who are taking care of you. You have got nannies and you have got people who are managing the house. You don't see those things. And hence, when you see that, you understand. And then when they hit a transition, they go to a good university, and all of a sudden everything falls apart because they're used to being spoon-fed, to be supported, to be managed in every possible way. And that's where the transitions become so important. And that's where the exploration is very important. Or the parent, they themselves are very particular about order, about cleanliness, and they make sure that you clean the room. But the moment they're out of that environment, bomb site, pit, it's a skip, your room. There are things lying around. So it is so important to explore the childhood history. It's not simple as talking to the mother and talking to the person and then coming to a conclusion. Sometimes you have to think beyond the obvious. And the obvious is there's so many possibilities that could happen in parents. And a lot of people who are doing in a good profession, and when you explore their history, you see that the parents have been quite strict in there. And strict parenting is quite good, especially for ADHD children, because they do not let it get astray. And I always tell them, today go to your parents and thank them for being strict. Otherwise, you would have ended up somewhere else. So those are the things, nitty-gritty, the nuances of knowing about an assessment, and challenging that. My child was not like that when they were young. It's because he never did anything. You were doing everything for the child. So they never became independent, and they never reached a stage where they were doing everything for themselves. So when dealing with adult assessment, these are the nuances, these are the different scenarios you come across. These are fascinating, where you get things to explore. Again, the things that I'm telling you, you won't find it collectively in any textbook or any research. These are the things that we have gathered talking with the patients, having some research paper here and there who are talking about it independently in silos. But this is so fascinating about the neurodevelopmental condition. It doesn't mean that if somebody has got ADHD, the disorder is going to be there for the rest of their lives. It really depends if they get into the right job, if they get into the right environment, if they get into with the right people. I think their life is going to change. I always tell people, if you're in a profession, get an organized PA and get an organized spouse. Your life will be sorted for life. I've got a very organized wife who keeps track of everything. And even like she has to come to the door and say, you have not taken your medication. You have forgotten your lunch. Midway through, I'll receive a text of the picture of the lunch box that I've left at home. And such is the state of distractibility. For example, I remember coming out of the house, and one day, and I remembered that I've not taken the medication. So there's a queue lying there. There's a yellow cup, small plastic cup, filled with water in the morning, which reminds me of my medication. So I went into the kitchen, I saw the yellow cup, and with it was the prepared lunch, prepared by my lovely wife, which I had forgotten already about. So what I did, I picked up the lunch and went to the car, and by the time I reached my workplace, I realized that I've not taken the medication. So I got distracted by the cup and the lunchbox that was sitting next to it. So these are the situations. And again, if you have got people around you who are organized, people around you who are good in managing you, and I'm lucky. Most people are not. And again, with the PA, I'm lucky. Most people are not. But this is the mantra. So if you have got ADHD and you're looking for a wife, looking for somebody who's a bit organized, and a PA who's more organized. Otherwise, your life will be in complete disarray. Yeah, I'm not advocating you to do a second marriage. Please don't. I'm not a home breaker here. Please don't get me wrong. But these are very important aspects of an adult assessment. Now, apart from the scaffolding, apart from the symptomology in adult ADHD, it remains the same. Now, the only difference is with the management. The management of ADHD in adults is completely different to that of children. In children, first comes the behavioral techniques, the strategies. A special education needs teacher. They need to have social skills training inside the school, the ELSA training, the emotional skills training in the school. And the parents have to go to parenting courses to manage ADHD in that environment. And once those strategies are not working, only then we consider medication. Where in adults, it's the other way around. Because they have gone through life, they have developed their own mechanisms, their own structures, their own scaffoldings. So it would be futile to send them for a social skills training because they will learn nothing. So the first thing is give them the medication. I always tell people that once you get the medication, that will be the first time in your life probably, or one of the few times when you have your attention span, concentration, distractibility, or less sidetracked. So you have to work on yourself. Because this medication is 50% of the effort. 50% has to come from you. So you have to develop your own structures. You have to develop your own routines, because what happens in the brain is there's a dysfunctionality in two substances released which causes ADHD, norepinephrine and dopamine. The brain tracts are small because the ADHD brain is small. And the connectivity is very patchy. So how you strengthen those brain tracts is A, by giving medication, B, by having a double whammy of having a structure incorporated in it, routine incorporated in it, so that the brain responds in a certain way. And it strengthens those pathways. Hence, when people come off the medication, the ADHD doesn't go away, but they're better able to deal with ADHD. So I'm not a very big advocate of having ADHD medication for life, but I believe in having it in spurts. But those spurts should be continuous. Plus, at the same time, you work on yourself, your own organization. This is the first time in your life you're getting organized. you're getting the attention span, you can able to do things, you procrastinate less. Now, procrastination is an amazing thing. Procrastination leads to crisis. Crisis leads to ADHD working at the last minute and then become the crisis gurus. But at the same time, when it comes to anything with the structure and the process and the procedure, with the right time frame, they lack it. What's procrastination is, I'm sitting there, I have this work laptop open right in front of me. I know that I have to deliver this work in 2 days' time. I know it. I'm stressed because of it. But somehow there's a physical barrier that is not letting me go to that. And 2 hours go past by. And you're still thinking about it, getting more stressed. In 4 hours, in 6 hours, 1 day. And then you're left with 6 hours and you're stressing a lot. And when it comes to 4 hours, all of a sudden, your norepinephrine and dopamine starts firing. And then when you go into a period of hyperfocus. Hyperfocus happens because of 2 reasons. When I say hyperfocus, the attention span is already there in the person. It is the switching of attention span that's a problem in ADHD. The hyperfocus is able to focus on a single thing because of 2 reasons. A, you're too much interested in it. B, you're too much stressed because of it. And hyperfocus is you cannot get away from it. You cannot move away from it. And why? Because you know the moment you move away, all the progress that you have made, it will be so difficult for you to get back into that hyperfocus situation. Hence, a person will be in hyperfocus for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, and will get the work done. Because they're stressed, they're aware of the consequences, what it's going to be life like, or they're more interested. Or hyperfocus can be a preoccupation in people who have got combined autism and ADHD. But there's a difference between that hyperfocus and the preoccupation between autism. And that is, with autism, it comes natural to you. You're happy doing that work. You're happy immersed into a completely different world where you know a lot about things. Where hyperfocus is driven by a stressful situation which is making you work because all of a sudden your norepinephrine and dopamines are firing all cylinders blazing. So this is what hyperfocus is. Somebody asked me a question about hyperfocus and I said, I will address that. So hyperfocus is that phase. So procrastination invariably leads to hyperfocus, or it leads to crisis work being done as a lastminute.com. With organization, again, there can be scaffoldings. An ADHD person who's organized, there can be 2 things. A, they have organized themselves. They know where they are. They do a lot of background work in putting things into place. And they know that if it's like a house of cards that you build in. You take 1 card away, the whole system collapses, right? The same is the case with organization and ADHD. If they slip 1 bit, the whole system is going to collapse, and they are aware of that. Hence, they follow it very inflexibly, and they are very stringent about it. Whereas, if somebody has got autism spectrum condition, it is a natural mechanism for them to be organized. They will have ADHD, but they will be organized. They know where those things are. They know how they are placed. They know for example, if they are moved 1 inch or 1 centimeter, their books or their belongings, they will know straight away. That is autism for you. Whereas in ADHD, there's a system which is ego-dystonic, which we're very uncomfortable creating that system, but they have to create it as a coping mechanism. Once it collapses, they get into a stressful or crisis state. Then the forgetfulness. Again, forgetfulness, people have... I was talking to a mother of 2, and she said, She was here for an assessment because 2 of her children were diagnosed with ADHD, and she said, my children make fun of me and they say, your house hides things away from you. So your house is playing hide and seek with you. You keep one thing and it goes missing completely. So what they do is, the coping mechanism is, or the structure is, that everything has a place, everything has a home. So you come in, you put your glasses, you put your wallet, keychains at a specific place. Either it's a place or it's a container or something. But if you don't do it once, then you'll find a difficulty to find your tracks. So a lot of the times, that organization is born out of, again, because they know how stressful it's going to be to find those keys, those glasses. People have lost passports. People have ended up in airports without passports. They keep their belonging somewhere. For example, things appearing in strange places, remote control in your refrigerator, hammers in your bathroom, things like that. In your wardrobe, you would find something which is supposed to go in your refrigerator. It would be in your wardrobe. So, because you're so inattentive, you don't know where you have put your things. And then you open it and say, damn, what's my phone doing? Like, a patient of mine lost her phone for 3 months. It was frozen in her freezer. She found it 3 months later. So this is exactly how it appears in adults. Now, when it comes to autism, it is the same mechanism, the same structures, the same processes, the same scaffoldings. The one thing is difference is that people with autism, they don't say they are different. They say they are different, but they say they have been weird. They're called weird. They are been called different names, different derogatory names, moron, imbeciles, because the way they walk, because the way they posture is, the way they make eye contact with people. And hence, people learn to make eye contact with people, but they don't know when to stop. So an autistic person would be literally staring at you like this. And so, how's your eye contact? It's perfect. But you realize that you've been staring at me for the past 15 minutes. You're making me uncomfortable now. So, those are things that are built in. It helps. At the same time, they know when to stop because they do not have the social nuances. They're different. They do things from a different perspective. But at the same time, you can see if something is natural or something is being learned. And with people with autism, you do find a lot. Especially when you take a photograph. I've got a very neurodivergent family, so whenever they're smiling, it's fake smiles coming up all around. And I was like, guys, stop having that fake smile. Just be candid about it. Because it's a typical smile that will come in and know that people are making you smile. And for that particular photograph, it's learned. It's not natural. People who are natural, you can see that. It kind of blends with your face. It blends with your personality. Whereas if it is something which is learned, it does not blend. They will make it work for them, but you know straight away. Like when I started working for autism spectrum, when I started diagnosing autism spectrum condition, I was working at a community mental health team. And so many times, because I had seen so many patients, by the time I would go to pick a patient up from the waiting room, and they would come to me, to my clinic, that was on a different floor, and by the time they would reach there, 90% of the time I knew that the person had been, they've been diagnosed with depression. Definitely there's an underlying autism condition. And then I would explore that. And 99.9% of the time, it was right. That they did have autism spectrum condition, which was masked by depression for such a long time. Because what you have to remember is depression and anxiety is one of the most comorbid conditions with autism and ADHD untreated. There are more people with ADHD and depression than depression alone. And they're more susceptible and vulnerable to getting depression and anxiety. Imagine poor self-confidence, poor self-esteem, all their lives they have been called a failure. All their lives they have not been dependent upon. They have to deal with all those situations. They have to avoid certain situations. They have to avoid certain food. They have to avoid certain people. They have to avoid certain circumstances. It's imperative that they will get it. And again, the treatment is not treating depression. The treatment is, especially for autism, getting them the answers for autism spectrum disorder. Do you know can you guess what would be a response of a person who's been diagnosed with autism and ADHD in a clinic? What is their response? Can you guess? Relieved. And more than 50% of the time, they burst into tears because they're looking for those answers for a very long time. They have been misdiagnosed with condition. They have been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. They're taking the medication, it's not working. They're taking the therapies, it's not working for them because it is not anxiety and depression at the end of the day. It is something else. And somewhere they have heard about something, or they find their children, or they find their grandchildren, and somebody says, he's very much like you when you were young. And that rings a bell. And that brings up a lot of people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They come to me not for starting medication, not for anything else, but knowing about the answer. They want to know that before they die, they should know what happened to them, what was happening to them, what is happening to them, and how is it going to stop. So people, again, with autism spectrum condition, they will have friends, but all of the friends are having the same interest. They're into, for example, if the interest is around spotting trains or spotting airplanes, and it will be those friends who will meet up for that purpose. Their socialization is not for leisure, it is socialization for an activity that helps them talk about things and to be able to discuss it further with somebody, because this is what they're passionate about. If they hear people talking, if you hear an autistic person talking about something they're interested in, you now feel that the person is autistic. But the moment you start to change the topic about something like clouds or weather or tea or something, yeah, that's it. You lose them. They lose interest. They're disinterested. With regards to being concrete, and again, as I said, with social cues, social situation, people have developed coping mechanism. They have their own strategies, but you have to explore that strategies going into their childhood. And a lot of the time, they have read books about body language. They have attended courses about body language. When I was training, I specifically went with a theater group for understanding body languages and the cues. Like I read at least 10 different books. I did not know at that time as to why I'm doing that, because I felt unconsciously that I was missing a lot of cues. But then sometimes it can go overboard as well. It came into balance when I knew that I was autistic myself, and hence once I have to look for. You'll be amazed that a lot of theater actors have got autism. And people say that people with autism cannot perform. I'm putting up a performance in front of you. I'm autistic. I'm supposed to be walking away, in fact, running away from this big crowd, from this big facility. But I'm not, because it's not the fear of people. It's the passion of what I do. Theater actors, because they have been given scripts. And when they're given a script, the script is scripted to the T. At 4 minutes and 10 seconds, you have to smile. At 5 minutes and 15 seconds, you have to fall down. At 16 minutes, you have to cry. It's a situation which is in their control. They know all the possibilities. And even if the script changes, it changes with time, and it is changed with their consultation. If they feel something is not right, they'll go to a person. But so many theater actors have got autism. And then initially when I found out about it, I was like, how? But then when I started talking to them and they started giving us, because we exactly know what to do at what point. We don't have to ramble and we don't have to second guess things, which is so much amazing. But again, you will see that. As an expert, I see that a lot. If people are giving that training, the psychoeducation, they will start to see it. And if somebody has got autism and ADHD, then definitely they will be able to see it better because they themselves are experiencing it. So many times people have told me, patients have told me that, how come you know? I was about to say that. It feels that you're sitting in my head. I said, yeah, because this is my head too. If you have autism, I have autism. If you have ADHD, I have ADHD. If you have AuDHD, I've got AuDHD. So I can understand your situation from that point of view, from that lived experience. Then I spoke to you about the repetition, why it happens. For me, repetition happens because every time I'm doing something, it is my comfort area. I have movies for certain situation. When I'm down and out, there are certain movies that I watch. When I am fascinated, there are certain movies I have to watch. When I want to know about leadership, there are certain movies that I have to watch. If not, something is playing in the background. You can play Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, all of the 7 series, all of the 8 movies for me in the background, and I know each and every detail about it because I've done it so many times. A, it's a comfort zone. B, I do not have to second guess what's going to happen the next occasion, the next scene. Thirdly, if I'm engrossed in something, doing something, I need a background noise. And it happens both in autism and ADHD. That you need a background noise. It can be a white noise. A lot of people, they need silence. Some people, they need white noise. Other people, they need something playing in the background. It's a music they have listened to before, or it's a movie that they have played before. Hence, they end up watching the same movie over and over and over again. Like every time my wife walks in, I'm on Ted Lasso. And my son walks in, I'm watching Ted Lasso, and they're sick and tired of Ted Lasso now. But for me, it is like every time I'm sitting in the tube, I have got all the 36 episodes downloaded. So I just go through it one by one. It's a 40 minutes journey. So it means that one episode out of the way. And I have to do it in a systemic way, in a very systematic way, one episode after another. It cannot be random. Sensory overload. In adults, again, you have got devices, you have got strategies, you can be in a different room, you can be away from people whose wavelength you do not agree with. People have headphones, earphones, noise cancellation, modulated one, amount of noise that they can allow. Sometimes I need noise, and sometimes I do not need noise. So I need to modulate that accordingly. If I do not need any noise, I just shut down everything. And that's why my secretary says, you're having an autistic day today. So yeah, I am. Sense of smell, again, it's with time, things become better. What you have to understand is autism and ADHD in childhood is very stressful. Autism and ADHD in adulthood, it's confusing, but is manageable because they have done it all their lives. Unless it is something, for example, with ADHD, 30 to 40% of prison population in the UK has got undiagnosed ADHD. 30% of the addiction services has got undiagnosed ADHD. And we're not talking about the diagnosed one. There are already diagnosed one there. So this is the extent of the undiagnosed people, which is having so much impact. For example, if it is a pure, hyperactive, impulsive type of ADHD, it costs at least $16,000 to $17,000 or euros to state every year. And you multiply it by 6% of the population, you're dealing with figures which amount to trillions and zillions. It's not even billions. So what's better? To invest in a service that will help diagnose, manage conditions, psychoeducate people, or you're paying the price and you're not doing any long-term measures about it. That's what I'm working on nowadays. in the UK, and about trying to convince them, to advocate them that, look, a stitch in time saves 9. You don't have to wait for the shirt to rip before you say, I have to get it to the tailor. You do it, you mend it beforehand. Okay. Now, recently, and again, this is how me and Adam connected through the Guardian article, which was the article about the rise of AuDHD. Where I was randomly approached by a writer who thankfully was neurodivergent, because I was scared to death as to what she would write about me. But she was very factual herself, so she gave the very factual account of things. And AuDHD is a colloquial term which is becoming more popular nowadays with the co-occurrence of autism and ADHD. Do you want to take a guess, anybody? What's the percentage of co-occurrence of autism and ADHD? Anybody? Pick a number. 10%, 30%, 60%, 70%, 26%? Yep. Yep, good. It can range anywhere from, because we quote different studies. There have been studies that say 70 to 80%. There are other studies that say that's from 15 to 30%. But I see in every second or third patient of mine either the counterpart of autism and ADHD. If I'm doing an autism assessment, it would be ADHD. If it is an ADHD assessment, it would be. So hence, I've started doing an AuDHD assessment for them, which is not exactly, because it's a colloquial term, so it's not a diagnostic thing. But again, you can have one assessment in 3 hours' time for an expert who understands AuDHD better. So, how many of you are confused between when people talk about autism and ADHD? Whether it's autism, whether it's ADHD? Show of hands? Okay. Why is that confusion? Okay. Sorry?
I think the inattention type of ADHD looks similar to autism. That's what confused me.
Okay. That's a very valid point. But is it inattention or is it lack of interest? People with autism spectrum condition, if they are not interested in anything, you can threaten them with anything, they will not do that. To a lot of people, it comes across as inattention. That's not inattention. That's lack of interest. I don't want to do it, and I'm not doing it. Whereas lack of attention is when they are trying to do it because of pressure or because of situation, but they're unable to do it because they keep on getting distracted. So you have a very valid point. It's inattention versus indifference. So you have to find out where this is inattention or they're not interested in it. Yep, please.
Earlier, before the break, you mentioned that actually ADHD has their particularities and they're very different from autism.
Yeah.
So how does that come together in one person, and how do you apportion when you do the diagnosis between the two?
I think that will entail another session. Or you can read my book, which is coming on the 3rd of April. It's called Explaining AuDHD. But again, briefly, what I can tell you is you can switch from one thing to another. And like probably Adam has got access to my laptop somehow, some ways, because he was exactly telling me the types of AuDHDs which I had written, and I said, have you got access to my laptop? So I was being suspicious there. So what happens is with AuDHD, they can be for me, like this isn't anything concretely done. It's not even a diagnostic criteria. It's not even a diagnosis as yet, AuDHD. Don't think it will ever be a diagnosis, but how you can describe to a layman person or layperson or even a professional is the AuDHD with a predominance of autism. For example, in which autism is stronger When you start exploring, you come to know that autism was masking the ADHD. It's mostly the inattentive time. Then you have somebody who have got ADHD, which is more predominant. And when you're exploring ADHD, you come to know that the person has got underlying autism spectrum condition. And there's a third type in which it seesaws. Sometimes the autism comes out and sometimes it's the ADHD comes out. I love organization, but I cannot be organized. This is one very good example of it. I like social gatherings, but I run out of social battery and I have to have my own space. This is another example of somebody who's got AuDHD. They can say things without a filter. Again, this is a differentiation point between autism and ADHD. For example, when a person with autism, they say things without a filter, it means very factual things. Oh, mom, why has this person not got a leg in a public transport? Somebody who has got a disability walk in and they will point out to a person, why is the person brown and I'm white? It can be considered racist in so many contexts, but if you look at the autistic, it's very factual. So they blurt out things, they do not have filter, but it is about things that are very specific. And if you're having a discussion, you're saying something, I said, no, you're wrong, this is how it is. And the other person might get upset, take an offense. When you talk to that person with autism, I said a factual thing. It was fact. Why should I be sorry about something? That's their problem if they are upset. Whereas in ADHD, they say things without thinking because they're so energized and they have to get the things out. And they will say things that can be very abrasive, but they will come back, they will reflect on it, and they will be remorseful about it. But in an AuDHD person, it happens both ways. Sometimes they offend people by factual things, and sometimes they offend people by saying things immediately. They have to impulsively. And the time when they say it, they are remorseful, and the other times when they are factual, they don't. So it is like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But at the same time, it's a balancing act as well. For example, I give an analogy that autism is like a parent to ADHD. It does not let the ADHD be too anarchic. Just like you see in ADHD, a parent takes care of them, their room, taking care of everything, their meals, and all of a sudden, when they go out, they feel that as if the world has toppled over because they don't know. So autism manages that anarchy. It does not let the ADHD be too impulsive, too anarchic, too disorganized. And ADHD acts like a friend to autism. It does not let it to be very recluse. So it brings them into a realm where they can socially interact, but they run out of social battery very quickly. Once the ADHD runs out of its battery, it impacts the autism, and they become, after an hour, they'll say, yeah, I have had enough, I'm going home. Or 2 hours, I have had enough, despite of the fact that they'll be with their favorite people. So this is how the autism AD, and in the book, I have described at least 8 or 9 situations like this. And I've explained how it is in autism, how it is in ADHD, and how it is in AuDHD. And we can come back later if there's an opportunity after the book is released to have that discussion and to explore that topic further. Now, I was talking about the differentiating points, because when people tell me, I cannot differentiate between autism and ADHD. SAADIQ, why can't you? Because they're on the opposite spectrums. They are completely different. They're phenotypes, which genetically means that the appearance of the things that they do might be very similar, but the rationalization of it is completely different. For example, I can give you an example of distractibility versus sensory overload. In distractibility, they get distracted, and they're happy about getting distracted in ADHD. One thing to another, and they're energized, and they won't even realize that they're moving away from it, unless it is a task that is time limited. Okay. 2 minutes? Okay. But in sensory overload, they are distracted. They are distracted and they are distressed by the noises, by people coming into their space, in the smells, whatever it is. So there's a difference between the two of distraction and sensory overload. Since I've got 2 minutes, I'll quickly give you a brief way of strategizing how things could be, how difficulties, people can have difficulties in the workplace. The first thing is communication difficulties. A person do not talk, a person do not socialize with others, a person doesn't come to the Christmas parties or the New Year parties, or if there's a social, the person does not go out. Let them be what they are. If they do not communicate with you in their space, it's not that they are indifferent to you, it's not that they do not like you, it's not that they don't want to be part of it. This is who they are. So the acceptance should be, yes, they're doing good work, but they are slightly different from others. We accept the difference. We embrace it. And the moment you start embracing the difference, you will see that the person starts opening up to you. And this is so important. The person, once you understand them, you embrace them, it will be completely different. Difficulty in social interactions. Again, with autism, it is different. They don't want to be. Whereas with ADHD, they love social interaction. So please don't put them in an open office because they will not work and they will not let you work. Once I'm in my open office, like 2 hours gone past by and we are having some 80s music, we are dancing around, we are talking about something, we are making some future plans about the service, but those 2 hours are gone completely and people get stressed because of that. Time management. So if you give them a task, it should be an interesting task, especially to one with ADHD. It's a complex task to ADHD. Whereas to a person with autism spectrum condition, you give a task and give them enough time to prepare for it. You don't expect the same thing that you do from ADHD. That somebody comes to me. I remember when I was training in a forensic unit and my consultant called. He said, Khurram, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I need 2 reports by 30 minutes. Can you imagine what did I say? I said, yes. So I went to my secretary, I worked with them, and I created 2 reports in 30 minutes. And the consultant said, yeah, that was a test. And thank God it was not my autistic day. Otherwise, I would have had a meltdown. But it was my ADHD day, so I went. And at that time, I did not know what was going on with me. Rigid work situation. Rigidities. Rigidities work for people who have autism. If you want to change a system, if you want to change the decor of the room, if you want to even move the chairs around in their office, please consult them. They can be a favorite chair. I sit in a chair in my living room when I go back to Pakistan, in my office, and I exactly know although the colors are the same for all the chairs in my office, I know exactly that somebody has moved it. And with ADHD, that does not apply. Performance under pressure. With autism, people who are autistic, you cannot do that. That will be, I think, you'll be looking at them going away for weeks on ends, taking an off sick. Whereas with ADHD, you can do that very easily. So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to imply is you explore the person. The important thing is psychoeducation. Educate officers, educated communities, educated your leaders, educate your colleagues so that they understand what they are dealing with. And everything does not come across as something which is unacceptable. It should be in a realm where we should be able to accept what is going on. We embrace it. And again, it goes both ways. I'm against entitlement. I'm an AuDHD. I don't feel that I should be entitled. I know my deficiencies. I know my differences. The first time I walk into the office, the first thing I say to my admin team, I'm a good clinician. You can give me 10 patients a day, 12 patients a day. I'm bad at admin, so you have to support me. And they do. a lot of the time. When you open about situations, it's a two-way traffic. Neurotypicals knowing about neurodivergent, neurodivergent knowing about neurotypicals. It cannot work when there's a one-way traffic going on. And when there are barriers, we all are part of an amazing, colorful mosaic. I think UN is the best example of it. People come from all races, from every country, from every culture, from different backgrounds, from different conditions, and they work together well. Let this session be the breeding ground of what happens, a top-down approach, because this is missing everywhere. And I'm coming from UK where they're big on autism and ADHD, but still they aren't that big. They think they are. They aren't that big. So we need that drive, and we're best to come from this place. So thank you very much for your time.
I have just a question answer, sorry.
Okay.
The Q&A?
Yeah.
Yes?
So I'm done, so I'll be more than happy for any questions. And
no, we have one question to start with Sotirius, then we'll take a couple of questions, and then we'll go for our coffee, yeah?
So thank you, Dr. SAADIQ, for these incredible insights. Honestly, I will need some time to digest it, all the information. I'm so sure the same applies to everybody here. It's no wonder that we went beyond time. Yes. Honestly. As we went beyond time, I think maybe we would integrate the Q&A into the coffee break. Good. So maybe we do 3 questions.
Yeah.
And then we go into the coffee break, because the colleagues here, they have the time plans very strict, and we went beyond, and unfortunately we don't have the luxury for complete. And you have your first question, you said, for UNESCO? Sorry, there was a question from it was on LinkedIn actually, from Juan Velati, working in Paris. And it's really a good one because it fits to the workplace here. His question was how ADHD and autism interact when they co-occur an individual, particularly in the workplace. I think that one you answered right now. Yeah. How can employers and colleagues create a more inclusive work environment that accommodates individuals' unique challenges? What specific adjustments or supports are most effective in helping them succeed professionally? Okay. So I think the question is more about the colleagues. How should they behave? Yeah.
I think, as I said, psychoeducation is the main key. Educate. Eyes can't see what the mind does not know. If you don't know it, if your mind does not know it, no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to do justice. So the most important thing is psychoeducation. Like, organizations are having neurodiversity session. I recently gave a talk to booking.com, and then in November I'm giving a talk to Warner Bros. About the neurodiversity and neuroinclusion. So it is about knowing what autism is, what ADHD is, what it entails, and not the stereotype. Looking at the neurodiversity paradigm, the new model, with the strengths and the not so strong areas, and how to highlight those. When it comes to situation and adjustment, a few of examples I did give about how to adjust. For example, in autism spectrum condition, they need noise cancellation, they need separate areas, they need time for adjustment. For ADHD, it can be last-minute thing, it can be very challenging, it can be a complex thing, or multiple tasks that can be given to a person so that they don't get bored with it and they can move around within the task. But at the same time, provision should be provided, for example, earphones, headphones. In NHS, we do, or in NHS and other organizations, we have got access to work. That is one thing. I use this thing. This is a tablet. It's called Remarkable. I think it was done. It is an amazing tablet. It's a tablet. It's a writing tablet which transcribes, converts into written text. It can have different areas, so I don't have to carry 100 textbooks all my work is in this one textbook, and it has a cloud. So things like that can be really helpful. Artificial intelligence is so amazing. And I think one example was yesterday, me and Adam, we were having an interview, and I said, let me introduce you to a device. So this is called Plod. So it listens to you, and straight away, any interviews, any phone calls, any meetings, it transcribes as it goes along. It's got ChatGPT 4.0 backing. And I think by the time you reached home, all the transcriptions of that interview, along with the audios, were with Adam. So that saved time. I work in a very busy job. My thing is to create reports after seeing a patient. And reports are 10 to 20 pages long. I have identified an AI tool which does things in real time. It listens to the patients. It listens to me. It has got inbuilt templates built in for ADHD. By the time I'm finished, I have to upload one document, extra document, and it creates a report for me within 5 minutes of me finishing the assessment. That report takes me another 5 minutes to edit. It goes to my admin, another 20 minutes, and report is gone. A 15 to 20 page report done in 20 minutes of you finishing a task or just interviewing. That is amazing. So these are the small hacks one has to look at. Technology should be used in a very effective and a smart manner, and it can change things around. ChatGPT is such an important tool as long as you use the right prompts to get to your answers. And a lot of people don't know that. They use ChatGPT just like that. You make ChatGPT the person that you want it to be and ask it very specific questions, giving as much as detail as possible. You'll be amazed what it can do for you.
You mentioned that ADHD and autism is at opposite ends. Now you say it many people that basically they might have both. What does it mean for the treatment? Because I would imagine that you would treat, if you just know it's ADHD, very differently than it's the autism. Now if it's mixtures, what does that mean?
Again, treatment, we use the term management. So managing ADHD is medication because there's an imbalance of neurotransmitters in the brain, the dopamine and norepinephrine. It makes sense to use that. But with autism is not a condition to be managed. This is who you are. The most important thing is to develop those insights into yourself, to understand who you are, what are the things that you do differently, and why you do that. After an assessment, I give patients a lot of resources to read, a few books that are very good, that has helped me understand autism better. There's one book called Pretending to be Normal, and it is such an amazing book. It talks about an autobiographical journey, because autism you cannot treat, you cannot manage. Autism is who you are. You need to develop insight, and you need to develop the scaffolding around it. Whereas ADHD, you can use medication. Now, in a person with AuDHD, what you have to remember is the moment you start treating ADHD, there's a balance going on between autism and ADHD. The balance tilts, and the autism feature becomes more prominent. So a lot of people come to me and say, "Oh, doctor, I think I've got autistic features. Is it one of the side effects of the medication?" I said, "No, it's not, because it must be hiding under." The good analogy is, for example, you're flying over a city, and the pilot tells you that you can at 15, 20,000 feet, you can see the beautiful city of Barcelona, let's say. But you look around and you see cloud cover. But miraculously, somehow the cloud cover gets blown away, and you can see the city. Now, autism is Barcelona. The cloud is ADHD. The blown away is medication or strategies, and you are the person who is observing it. It can be yourself, it can be somebody else. And hence, when ADHD is managed, autism symptoms become more apparent, and hence I educate people that in which I see autistic features very prominently. I tell them that this is what's going to happen. If they're just features, and if I know that these are not problematic, I tell them not to get, like I'm against labels. But again, I want to give label to people who will require it. Because otherwise, it's more about knowing yourself, telling others what you know about yourself, and and kind of propagating that message forward. So in those people who've got autism and ADHD together, it's a fine balance. And you have to understand that fine balance. I give a lot of resources beforehand, before giving medication, so that they're aware of what is going on. There's a very good book, again, by Temple Grandin called Autistic Brain. And it talks about different kind of autistic brains, because the stereotype is people who are autistic are into maths and science and into logic. No, they're into humanities, they're into social sciences, they're into arts, into so many different things. Just like neurotypical people, they have got their brains. So education, psychoeducation, insight developing, and it can be a game changer.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Dr. SAADIQ, for your presentation, and I'm going to be brief. My question is there an ideal diagnosis process? When it comes to autism, my son is 5 years old, and he was diagnosed recently as being on the spectrum. Is there an ideal diagnostic process? Thank you.
An ideal diagnostic process. Okay, now the ideal diagnostic, because we have got some tools which are considered gold standard. People like me, they move away from these tools, especially if it is an adult, but generally it is followed. So the first thing is, if somebody is being assessed, they use a tool called ADOS, A-D-O-S, and it is about a social play environment. They expose the child into a social play environment, and they look at their interactions and their nuances, about their conversations, about their knowing of emotions, and they create a report. And then the second step is there's a tool called ADI, Autism Diagnostic Interview, revised, and it's a developmental history that you take with the child, with the parents, and that spans over 2 hours. And once ADOS and ADI are done, there's a multidisciplinary meeting between the psychologist and whosoever has carried on the ADI. They meet up, they discuss the outcome, and then a follow-up appointment is booked with the parent, and they talk about autism spectrum condition, and then they give you the resources and how to manage those conditions. Wow.
So we have to move now on for the coffee break. All the questions that couldn't be asked, please be so kind and ask them now during the coffee break. Yeah. And we, Dr. SAADIQ, we are thanking you from the bottom of our hearts for coming today and giving us these wonderful insights into ADHD. Thank you.
Thank you very much.